Hi guys, welcome back to Deanne's POV podcast. My name is Deanne and I'm so excited to have you guys here with me today. So let's get into the episode. Okay, so a little life update. My sister kind of started this before I did, but then I kind of hopped on the train after, and we're both doing like no added sugar. It doesn't mean no sugar. Like I'll still have like fruit and like natural sugars, but it's just like no artificial added sugar. And it was low-key a little hard in the beginning because I do love ice cream, and I haven't had ice cream in about 2 months, which is insane. But yeah, anywho, today I wanted to kind of talk about diet culture because me personally, I've fallen into diet culture so many times in the past, especially like in the beginning of my health and wellness journey, and that's like mid, like late teens or whatever. So I honestly don't like diet culture because I feel like when people talk about something, it's like it's this way or the highway, and it's like, oh, this will work for you, like this worked for me, it's gonna work for you. And I honestly, like, now as an adult, as a 21-year-old, I'm like, that is just not true. And I guess it's because I do have like such a heavy background in this, but from what I learned, we are all different. Like biochemically, we are all different. And let me just give you guys a little stats. So all humans, every single person on this planet shares about 99% of the same genes, like same DNA, same everything, with less than like 1% variation. But on top of that, we all have different biochemical individuality. So that's what kind of makes us all different, including the 1% variation between us when it comes to our actual DNA. So when we look at it from that light, like I said, everybody's so different that not everything's gonna work for everybody. So some diets didn't work for me, some did, and eventually I kind of just created this relationship with food that works for me. And I feel like there is a universal answer to this, even though some people have different preferences, and I feel like that's all it really comes down to. So let's actually get into this. Okay, so when I think about the human body, I like to think of it as this well-oiled machine. It's not thousands, but trillions and trillions of cells in our body that are all just like working together in order to keep you alive. And on top of that, we also have trillions of microbes. And if you don't know what a microbe is, it's just like bacteria, fungi, just like microorganisms in that sense that also live within our digestive tract and also on our skin. And those are like the two main areas. They're probably elsewhere too, but I just wanted to focus on our digestive tract. Weird fun fact about this actually. Um, there was like they did do like a count when it came to microbiome, and originally they thought that it wasn't as much as it really is, and there's like a slight lean to more microbes than cells in your body, so you're technically more like bacteria, which is like kind of gross to think about. Anywho, we all know that we need to eat our micro and macronutrients, and they all play a role in our body. Like if you ever been vitamin deficient or like mineral deficient, you felt the pain. But let me just highlight what macronutrients are. Macronutrients is protein, carbs, and fats. So proteins are actually broken down into amino acids that are used for rebuilding your body. carbs is broken down into glucose, which is then broken down into ATP through like a bunch of like biochemical circuits or whatever. So carbs is energy, protein is building blocks, and then fats kind of play a larger role. So they provide energy, cell structure support. They help with absorbing essential vitamins, and they also aid in hormone production. So fats are very, very important in our health. And let me just highlight unsaturated fats. Those are the fats we should be eating. So on the other hand, we have micronutrients, which are vitamins and minerals. So we can't make our own vitamins and minerals, so a lot of the times we do have to consume them. And they play a role as a cofactor. So what that means is during a chemical reaction, they kind of play this middleman role. So they kind of keep the reaction going. So without certain vitamins or minerals, it's very unlikely that the reaction is going to take place. So let me just give you a example of this. So a lot of girls usually are iron deficient. I went through iron deficiency, like severe iron deficiency, 3 years ago, and it was awful. It was a train wreck. Anywho, iron plays such a large role in oxygen transportation. So in our blood, we have this 4 complex protein that's called like hemoglobin. And hemoglobin needs iron to bind to oxygen. Without iron, hemoglobin can't bind to oxygen. So it reduces the amount of oxygen transport that you have in your body. And this could lead to being tired, sluggish, brain fog, and just a whole lot of other stuff. And honestly, when I was iron deficient, I had to wear like sunglasses indoors just because the lights were too much and I just wanted to sleep all day. It was honestly one of the worst things I've been through, and I'm never going back. Okay, so now that we have micro and macronutrients covered, I wanted to focus on diet. And I've read a lot of scientific literature on this, and a lot of the work is valid. Um, and that's mainly because, like, when you do a science experiment, people repeat your experiment multiple times. It is widely accepted. And a lot of these papers were comparing two diets in particular. Like, it was more of a primary plant diet in comparison to a animal based product in comparison to a animal based diet. Okay, so how do they determine between a healthy gut and a unhealthy gut? So they look at your microbiome and they kind of focus on diversity and richness of certain bacteria in comparison to others. And one primary thing that they have noticed in all of these studies were people with a plant-based diet tend to have a higher diversity and richness of microbes in their digestive system. And so my main conclusion from that was a lot of bacteria that live in our gut prefer plant-based foods because they are nutritionally dense, and that kind of makes sense to me in comparison to like animal-based products just because they don't have that nutrient richness that plants do. And in addition to that, there is good and bad bacteria, obviously. And the way I kind of differentiate between that is kind of the relationship that we have with our gut microbiome. So good bacteria obviously has that I scratch your back, you scratch mine type of relationship. So it's mutualistic, and you guys are both benefiting from this relationship in comparison to bad bacteria where you are kind of just like giving more than receiving, and it's kind of like a win-loss situation. And bad bacteria are more parasitic, like that's the type of relationship that it is. It's a parasitic one, and if you ever had to deal with parasites in your life, awful. And honestly, I'm so glad that this is such a hot topic, not just in science, but also like in the world of health and wellness. And that's just because microbes play such a large role in our overall health. They help with our immune system, our digestive system, reproductive health, and they play a large role in our day-to-day lives that we probably don't even think about. Okay, so this is kind of where diet culture comes in, because a lot of these papers and a lot of books that I've read on dieting and how our microbiome plays a large role in it or whatever, people are pushing certain diets like being vegan or vegetarian, and then there's a current like wave of being completely carnivore. And even for earlier humans, people did assume that they were more carnivore based, or a lot of their diet was animal products. So there was this study done earlier this year. I think it was the University of Wyoming, but honestly, I'm not exactly sure. I didn't put it in my notes. But they were looking at the bone composition of earlier humans to see kind of like the ratio of minerals and vitamins and stuff like that. And what they like discovered in this way was people's diets were more of an 80-20 split. So what that honestly means is that earlier humans were more gatherers than hunters, and they ate more plant-based foods, which was kind of interesting because it kind of debunked the whole idea of they were more hunters than gatherers, and their diet was primarily animal-based products. Okay, so what did I get from this? Do I switch to being vegan or vegetarian, or whatever? I personally found a diet that worked for me. I am not vegan or vegetarian because I just don't think it's the lifestyle that I want. But I am focusing on eating more whole foods because that's where really the nutrients is in comparison to processed foods. in comparison to processed foods. And as we kind of talked about earlier, we do need protein, fats, and carbs in order for us to live. And on top of that, you are what you eat, because that's honestly what makes you, is the food that you're eating. So quality over quantity any day. And I'm not saying that being a vegan is bad or the carnivore diet doesn't have its health benefits, even though science doesn't really show it. A lot of people do say that they had some benefits from a carnivore diet, even like the keto diet and all that stuff. They all were proven in a way to have some benefits, but you just need to compensate for the amount of protein, carbs, and fats that you're getting. Especially like the keto diet, because I know a lot of people try the keto diet, but keto but what the diet is actually so what the diet actually is cutting out carbs from your diet or reducing the amount of carbs that you have, and carbs equal energy. So your body's just compensating using keto body, which is the resort to like this idea of starvation. So it's kind of just like running off of stored fuel in a sense. So no, like none of these diets are necessarily bad. However, they're not just like long-term diets. Like vegans and vegetarians do compensate for the amount of protein that they need. So that is always a good thing through like plant-based protein options, and just like getting sustainable amount of nutrients is the end goal. So there's not necessarily a diet, or at least that I believe that we should all follow, and it's not just like black and white, obviously, for everybody, because we're all so different. Some people do have food sensitivities and stuff like that, so just finding the diet that's right for you, and also just like focusing on building the foundation for your future health, because I feel like the one thing that we can all agree on is processed foods are so bad for you. And I'm honestly not surprised that a lot of people are coming out saying that processed foods are linked to chronic illnesses and chronic diseases long term. So just like being more conscious of the food that you're eating, because in this case, if you really look at the ingredient list on the back, it's like all these extra ingredients, and it's like, why do you need this to make such a simple dish, for example? And the rule that I have for myself is food is a lot more simpler than they make it. So try your best to make more home cooked meals. And that's just like my rule, just because like when I cook, I know what's going into it. I know the type of ingredients and the quality of the ingredients that I am using. And it's funny because I honestly don't feel as sick as to when I like eat out. And like I feel like, I don't know if this is like 1,000% true, but I feel like it's the oil that they're using. A lot of like places do use seed oils in comparison to like olive oil and stuff like that, and there's so much controversy with that in particular, just because so many people are saying, well, there's no like negative side effects when it comes to using seed oils, or there's like nothing linked to health or whatever. But there's some other papers that are like, well, it increases like DNA breaks and mutations in your DNA. And it's funny because we already deal with a lot of DNA breaks on our day to day. So just like increasing the level of DNA breaks and mutations could be potentially bad. So I just prefer to use olive oils instead of like other seed oil, just because I think it's better for me. And I feel like just making the right decision when it comes to food and just being more conscious, because it really is a lot simpler than they're making it to be. And on top of that, the last thing I want is to be 50, 60 years old, feeling sick and just like being in chronic pain, especially if it's due to the food choices that I made. And the health choices that I made when I was younger. So just like being more mindful of that, just being more mindful of everything that you do is key. And it's funny because processed foods are so addicting in general, and I feel like it's such an interesting book to read. But if you guys are really interested in this, you guys should read The Magic Pill. I think his name is like Johanna Har. I don't know if that's actually his name, but the book is called The Magic Pill. It's such a interesting book. And it kind of like made me see processed foods from a more scientific point of view, because like we all know that processed foods are made in a factory and they're made in certain ways to be addicting and to have you keep coming back. And he like mentioned this study done by a German scientist in New York, I think. Like he kind of like came from Germany to New York, about why processed food is so addicting. But I feel like that's a topic for another time. So all in all, for this episode, I just want to highlight, you are what you eat. Make the right decision when it comes to food, and we all know processed food is so bad for us, so pick the better option and eat more whole foods. There's not necessarily a specific diet that everybody should follow, just because we're all just so different biochemically, and food is just different for all of us. And just to like create a healthier relationship with it in general, food is fuel, and just be more conscious about the quality of the food that you're getting. And I know sometimes it's a little bit harder because of accessibility, but in general, just be more cautious of the food that you're eating, because in general, we all want to put our future selves' health into perspective, because what you do now will affect you in the future. So pick the right lifestyle for you, pick the right diet for you, and focus on being happier and healthier. Anywho, I feel like I am rambling a bit right now, so I will end the episode here. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I really enjoyed recording this episode just because it's so important to me. So yeah, feel free to leave a comment or a review for this podcast if you really like this episode. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.